Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to. What is up, everybody? Good morning. Good morning. 9 o'clock on the East Coast. Early
9
risers.
o'clock.
8 o'clock.
It's 8 o'clock.
I'm in the future. The little slip. Everybody is like, you're a time traveler. 8 o'clock for you normal people. 5 o'clock on the West Coast. Good morning, David Meltzer. So awesome to see you bright and early.
Yeah, this is when the best time to see me, my brother. So super excited to be here. I got a week at home, and it may be my only full week at home the entire year.
Wow.
I was looking. I know through about May right now, I'll be at least gone a few nights, if not a whole week. And hopefully those weeks include seeing you guys, as our schedules are better coordinated now.
We're getting there. We're getting good at that.
We have a lot of time together over the next couple months.
We do. Let's talk Super Bowl. What'd you think about the game? What'd you think about halftime?
The Super Bowl for me, there's three parts. There's the experience, the business development, and the post-production content. Surprise! So for me, the experience was the easiest one that I've had in 30 some years, and most productive. So when it came to the experience, it was unbelievable. My kids are older. They got to participate. My wife was there. There was just real fun and not fake fun, which is a lot of past Super Bowls. Everyone trying to be what they want people to think they are. And for me, it was one of the first times, I just felt like I am. And a lot of people circled back into my life. Lee Steinberg reached out and we had a great meeting together. And, it was really nice to really sit down instead of just say hi. And then a few other people as well. And a big shout out to Bounty, to SiriusXM, and to Threads, who hosted us in our interviews. And I mean, obviously, we're taking the SiriusXM relationship to the next level. Big shout out. So on that end, as far as the game went, I flew home for the game, and I predicted a blowout by the Eagles. And I also predicted that means bet on the Chiefs, because I thought there's no way you bet against Mahomes. So I was really surprised that I was right for once. And I really, the game, only reason I enjoyed it was to see Patrick Mahomes is human. So that was fun for me as well, because I really didn't think he was. And then, by the way, did you see the commercial with Tom Brady when they took the batteries out of his arm? That's the way I thought.
No, I didn't. I missed that one.
Yeah, they basically, we're like, Tom Brady's a robot because he died on the set, and they replaced him with some Duracell batteries. It was really a good commercial. But overall, what a lot of people still don't get was post-production content. Let me just tell you this, which is an amazing proof of how important the stage theory is. And no matter what profession you're in, the most popular show on Radio Row, wasn't the CBS, wasn't any interviews with Gary Vee or David Meltzer or Rich Gannon or any, even McAfee, right? It was the girl from, is it Call Your Daddy or Call
Her Daddy? Yeah.
Call Her Daddy from Barstool, who I met years ago. She's not with Barstool anymore, obviously. That was absolutely, everybody wanted to meet her. Everybody wanted on her show. It was a real testament to what Radio Row and what the NFL is now, about the Taylor Swifts, about Call Her Daddy. And, there's a dime a dozen sports shows out there. I thought that was really exciting for people like me and you, who understand experiential business development and post-production content.
That's wild.
What about the halftime show?
I'm too old, bro. Like, I literally didn't even understand. I didn't even understand I didn't think the music was that great. I mean, I just came off of the Grammy Awards where the 8 new artists rocked my world. the Benny Boons of the world, like these kids. I mean, I'm like, I wasn't too old for those 8 people, Shabuzi, like they moved me. This idiot, I mean, I don't even understand if he dissed, Drake or not. And, Serena's a friend, and I thought her dancing was good. That was fun, but I didn't understand the intricacies of what actually happened. And, Julie's on TikTok all the time. So it blew up. Like everything was Kendrick Lamar, on her TikTok for like an hour. And I'm like, I'm not even getting this. So
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I didn't understand until after, like, what was going on. I mean, because I don't understand the feud. I never followed that. So afterwards, I was like, oh, there was a lot of like
nuances
there that people caught that I had no idea. So it was interesting to watch it afterwards. I am with all the ladies though of my age bracket. So excited that he was wearing those flare pants because he rocked those. So I was like, look at those jeans. Where'd he get those? I need a pair.
Like Lenny Kravitz, remember?
Lenny Kravitz,
I was a little bit bothered by myself because he looked so sexy from behind in the low cut women's pants. So I bought a couple pair. The hairy back doesn't look quite as good as those 2 guys rocked it.
There you go.
I'd like to get your thoughts. I mean, so if you're like, hey, I didn't like catch all the subtle nuances. What are your thoughts about that in today's culture of these subtle digs versus probably guessing, but we've never talked about this, but probably I would imagine you prefer a direct approach. Hey, listen, I have an issue with you. I have a problem with you versus I'm going to take one of the world's, if not the world's biggest stage, and I'm going to air that I have a problem with you, but I'm going to do it very subtly. I'm going to, so that, people that don't get it, the David Meltzers of the world, they'll be oblivious to it. But the people that do, they'll know that I'm poking at my adversary. How do you feel about that?
It's interesting. Obviously, in a personal level, I'm very direct. I had a conversation with a guy who used to be a vice president of mine at the Super Bowl. My energy was on because a lot of these people circled back, and I was very transparent about, what had occurred and why it had occurred, and and my feelings were negative. I was here to help. So of course I would go direct. The interesting thing as a marketer is I think it's genius. So you wonder when you're on that big of a stage, the world's biggest stage, how much is it of just being smart and learning from a lot of people? How do you grow or keep your community engaged is you have to be polarizing. And so if your engaged audience, people who love you and hate you, would pick up on the nuance as a marketing tool, I thought it was really impressively genius because, if my wife's TikTok was blowing up like that, I bet everybody's LinkedIn, Instagrams, and TikToks were all talking about the dig. And in the end, I don't think Drake gives a shit. And it probably brought even more people to like him and more people to like Kendrick as well. So that's how I see it. I think on a personal level, it's easy to be transparent, put confidence in yourself that, look, you should be able to express a past occurrence or activity as a snapshot and then utilize a meaning to either encourage and improve upon your relationship or explain why it's going to either be falling away or even firing someone from your life.
Do you feel the same when it comes to like issues? Because it's one thing to like poke at a relationship, but what about something that you stand for when it comes to an issue, not even necessarily political, but maybe social or something like that? Do you feel like that's something that should be talked about and polarized to your audience?
Well, first of all, I want to reiterate what David said, that polarization is the way to cause thought, is the way to challenge somebody's belief system versus just following, and I think in the 80s, I had a lot of people not drawing comparisons, but making reference, we had the Michael Jackson halftime show at Pasadena, had the Prince Purple Rain classic, and that was just based off of their artistic ability. They weren't trying to champion a cause or make a statement,
Sure.
But I think in today's world, pop culture and the way that we operate, TikTok, that wasn't a thing when Michael Jackson performed at Pasadena. So he wasn't even trying to do it for post-production eyeballs. It was at the moment who was looking at it. But that reminds me of, our interview with Lonzo Williams, who, Eve After Dark and credited with bringing together NWA. I was super struck. He was like, none of those guys were gangsters. They were playing a role, and I love that he said, listen, it was really about shedding a light. It was a social activism about shedding a light around the country and around the world about some issues and things that were going on, particularly for these young men in Compton, to bring that to the entire world through their music and through these roles that they were playing. I think if you're afforded a stage, I think it's very noble if you have a strong passion in your heart. Whether or not everybody agrees with it, that's not important. What's important is you agree with it. You wanted to capitalize on your 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or 5 hours of fame, and not just get the money, but you also had a message that you felt was important. So I see people that are like mad about some of the innuendo or some of the symbolism in Kendrick's halftime. And I remember I was telling you, like, it doesn't even matter if I agree with it. I mean, he earned his moment there. I didn't. I've never been the Super Bowl halftime performer. So kudos to him. You had your opportunity. Say what you got to say is what I think.
Yeah, well, I agree on a stage, especially now with the total addressable community being so large, and the purposeful amplification of messaging, that you're better off being you. And we talk a lot about I am versus this is what I want people to think I am. And when you're playing a role, that's an interesting thing, because people would say, well, Dave, that's not really what you teach. You're playing a role. You have to be I am, not this is what I want you to think I am. It's interesting because I was thinking Howard Stern, who changed the world of media. And by playing a role, he actually was portraying who I am. Mm-hmm. Although the role wasn't who he was, the fact that he was playing a role was the same as After Dark, right? He was playing a role to show who I am and to elevate the spotlight on who I am and who others are and what these issues are, to bring attention to it. And so I think that's another way of expressing who I am, is to play a role to bring or to show or to shed light on an issue. We may play a role, and that role may not actually be who I am. It may be an exaggeration. It may be a portrayal of something in order to effectuate who I am or what I believe or feel or think, by saying and doing things in a different manner than I actually am. And so I think there's an interesting nuance that is, I think, effective on a really big stage with that type of audience. But otherwise, if you're saying, I'm into this unsubscriber list, I really believe the number of subscribers you have is directly relative to the number of people that unsubscribe you. And you're much better off. You're dead if you don't have anybody unsubscribing you or saying you suck.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about that too.
Yeah, but on some, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. On some level too, do you think that, when we talk about Prince and Michael Jackson and like way back then, all they did was obsess about their talent, right? And how to display their talent to the world, which is what we essentially as consumers and viewers are paying them for, right? Is that expression of that talent that a lot of other people don't have. So on some level, does it get to a point where, too many people are utilizing their moment, their stage to deliver a message instead of their talent? Like, at what point do we get completely, consumed with everybody has an underlying message instead of getting up and showing up the best that they can be in the thing that they're, talented at? You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, I think they've always done it. I think in art, that talent is utilized in order to express for those who want to use it to mm-hmm. express. So, Quincy Jones and took in all these artists for We Are the World, or, look back, John Lennon and Bob Marley, two of the greatest artists of all time, were always purpose driven and message driven.
Music. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Bob Marley, my favorite line in the movie, because I'm a huge Bob Marley fan, is, hey, you're not the messenger. You're the message. And, that, I think if you're big enough, in John Lennon and the Beatles, Elton John, even I think, and that's why he was capable of literally raising over $1 billion for HIV and for AIDS and for awareness of his beliefs. And so I think it's really an understandable thing through history that artists are going to use their art and their talent in order to express what they think. Not all of
So
them.
how much of that do you think, like, so for our listeners, how do they do that and take that and push it through what they're doing?
Well, I want to go back 1 second to something Dave said, because I love how aligned our thinking is, and maybe it's worldviews. I love spending time with Julie because I know that Julie and I, on a personal level, have a very aligned thinking, but very different worldviews, which is very interesting to me to be able to basically, like one of our mentors had told us, like, truth got placed in a box, and then these holes are punched in the box, and we're all looking in at truth, but we're looking at it through different holes. So it's very fascinating to me to hear other people's perspective. They're just looking, like, wow, your hole is like completely different angle. So you have a whole other view of this than I do, which is just absolutely fascinating. And when you talk about like I am, and we want to live life as I am, not who I want you to think I am. But I was thinking, man, that's interesting, because I always think I want to live life as who I think I am. In other words, so think of it this way. I know that just by human nature and my human design, I have flaws and I'm not a perfect husband. But I want to think I am, and I want to aspire. I want to aspire to that, right? So in business, I want to make decisions and show up as the entrepreneur or businessman that I think I am. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to act like I'm perfect, because I think that, so the I am part is part and parcel. It's critical to that. But then we have to strive to, because a lot of people are, you hear all the time, but I'm not that confident. I'm an introvert. Well, that's me. I'm an introvert, but I've learned. And so now, the three of us, we're surrounded by a lot of really smart people. And I think about, Todd Herman and the alter ego effect, who makes a claim. I love this, but it's a very bold claim, because people say, like, be your true authentic self. And Todd says there is no such thing as your true authentic self. That there's all these versions that we were taught very early on to play these roles of, different situations, the entrepreneur, the content creator. Because, I mean, maybe you, Dave, but I know that Lacey and I don't wake up and we're like, yay, we're going to perform some content today, but we do it, right? So we step into that role. And so even to your point, Lacey, like, I think a lot of it is we have these stories about who we think we are, and we may aspire to be something in that gap, right? We talk about that. There's a gap. It takes energy to transcend that gap and get there so that you can elevate your consciousness.
Let me clarify one thing. The differentiator, because I agree with you 100%. It is what I think I am versus what I want other people to think I am.
Love it.
Right. And so Herman has it right, in my opinion. And way back, cohigo ergo sum, I think I am, I think, therefore I exist. Right. And so I think the distinction in what you're saying is, I still think there's a gap between who I think I am. And this is why I remember, and recollect, I am happy, I am healthy, I am wealthy, and I am worthy. This is what I think I am. But it's different than what I want people to think I am.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Because on Instagram, TikTok, there's tons of people who are living a life of, out of their own alignment with their divine direction, because they're more worried about what other people think they are than what they think they are.
Well, and there's also the layer of what people told them they are. Right. I mean, I think that's also something that you have to consider is, a lot of people, they think I am, but they've been told there's something else for so long that they don't know how to break free from that identity. Right. And that's always the struggle, is like, what are the things that people told you? Because a lot of times we worked with a lot of individuals that are trying to live up to an identity that they were told they are, but isn't in alignment with who they are. And that's also a gap that takes a lot of energy to sustain, right?
Yeah, or worried about changing somebody's snapshot of what they actually do think they are
Right.
is a whole nother realm of a layer in this perceived participation. And so, three of the things that allow us to live in control, have a certainty of within, is being responsible for what has happened, being attracting what has happened, and participating in the perception of what had happened, all under the guise of learning from it. And so as you look at these three realms of what I call accountability, they're really realms of certainty. As we introspectively examine only the certainty of self, because time, as you know, in my mind, is only thing certain outside of us. It's the only thing dependable that we all can use as a common denominator, North Star. None of us are smart enough to use space as a common denominator, although I know mathematically and with physics we could use space, but none of us are smart enough, even Elon Musk. So the certainty within is, for me, a construct of controlling the accountability realm within the context of what am I going to learn from being responsible, attracting, and participating in the perception or thinking about what I am.
I'm going to add one more to that. What am I going to learn? And then how am I going to grow? Because how am I going to adapt?
And progress is better than grow, because you could grow in the wrong direction. So I would rather have positive growth in progress towards a divine direction of where I think I want to be according to what I think I am.
Yes, maybe we'll go back and modify for the collective consciousness, but 2 of the 5 signs of life are adaptability and growth, right? So in order to be alive, you have to be adapting and growing. But I want to go back to, so now I want to
What are the other 3? What are the other 3?
Assimilation, excretion, adaptability, growth, and reproduction. So those are important. So you talked about how your energy was right. Everybody was, you had a lot of full circle moments. I want to tie this together because you also talked about a lot of times we have this like snapshot of ourselves or of another person. And that's one thing that I've been very fascinated in, is our ability to judge a snapshot. And maybe, I wasn't with you this year, but maybe in this scenario, there were people who had particular snapshots of you or themselves or your relationship. And that might have caused a distancing, a growth in a wrong direction. But then we come back together. And what I find is fascinating is the human psychology prefers to judge the snapshot versus the growth. If we are constantly growing, even if you're growing in the wrong direction, at least you're exhibiting signs of life. So I'm looking at individuals and judging our trajectory. And it's so fascinating because then you talked about unsubscribers and the haters. Well, they're judging snapshots. Okay, can you imagine? So whether it's social media or an email, I got one email. I didn't like the email, so I decided to disconnect into eternity. I hit unsubscribe. That literally is a low-level thought process that says, based off of these, 150 words that you wrote to me today, you are now dead to me. I'm choosing to disconnect off of a snapshot versus, I think it's interesting to watch someone's growth. And I heard this, I'm not even positive where I heard it because I love to give credit where credit's due, but someone was talking about Steve Jobs and how a lot of people, and I think Musk, who you mentioned earlier, falls in this category, but maybe Lee Steinberg falls in this category. Maybe David Meltzer falls in this category because as I've gotten to know you have a past that is very different than the present. So if somebody were to look at you and be like, I remember him at Samsung, what a dick. I hate David Meltzer because of a snapshot. Versus what I think is impressive is saying, look, let's judge the growth. Like, how cool is it that this person who I thought was a dick has become this person? And how did they do that? Steve Jobs was the same way, because in the early days of Apple, everyone thought he was a dick. Then he dies a genius. Like, how do you go from you're a dick to a genius? Well, it was a growth process that today, after his death, we admire. Wouldn't it have been cool if we could have admired the growth process during the evolution of the human being and been like, that's super cool. He's not as much of a dick anymore. I'm glad I didn't unsubscribe. And then most importantly, what I admire about you, what I try to learn from you is, well, how did you do that? I think a lot of people are intrigued of your story because you lost a lot. But I'm like, well, that's interesting. But like, I mean, I'm just one stupid decision myself from losing everything. So,
Right.
okay, but it's fairly easy to lose everything.
Everybody on earth can
To
lose
become who
everything.
you are today.
Everybody on earth can lose everything. It's not a
Right.
great challenge. But
In a
yes,
split second.
it's interesting because I was, and I'll probably do more content about this. Who do you want in your neighborhood? You want people who admire the MVP or the most improved player,
Most
right?
improved.
Right. And so if I'm looking for the most improved player, the delta, the desire players, I watched the Eagles, and yes, I knew Jalen Hurts was going to win the MVP, but I don't think he deserved it. I think one of the defensive linemen deserved the MVP, without a doubt. Sweat or the other kid, because they were the only ones who have ever dominated Patrick like that, and that's why they won. Not because Jalen Hurts threw amazing passes and was like this amazing quarterback like Joe Montana, 18 passes to Jerry Rice for 250 yards, or Tom Brady in some games. But I don't think Jalen Hurts was the MVP at all. I think that the defensive line was. And I think, looking in this culture of, MVP, we lose the delta, the desire that it takes. And, I try to surround myself with people who are looking for the most improved players, not the MVPs. And so there is a big difference between sycophants who are looking for the MVP and rah people that just admire you for one achievement or a snapshot of that, or someone that is involved and evolved in a friendship. Look, in your own friendships, if you're not focused in on the most improved player and you're looking at snapshots, you're not going to have any relationships because we're all human, right? Like,
Right.
I can't tell you that I have not been a dick to Sean, and he's my best friend. And I couldn't name one of my best friends that I haven't been, or my brothers that I haven't been a dick to, or my mom. But that has nothing to do with how I feel about them, that I lie in front of a bus for them, whatever. So when I am a dick, that's where, number one, I forgive myself and I look for gratitude of finding the light, the love, and the lessons. And look, I would tell you in my life, the person I've probably been the biggest dick to is the person I love the most, which is my wife. And I bet you anyone that has a strong marriage would tell you that that's who they're the biggest dick to. And it's only because they're around each other the whole time, and humans are dicks. And that's why I'm writing the book, Don't Do Business with Dicks, which comes out in September with Simon Schuster. So, I think people are really going to enjoy some of this analysis.
Love it. I love it. Where can we see you next, David?
You can see me online. I'll go. Let me run it down real quick. San Francisco, we're doing meetup, and I'm speaking at the LFG Society. It's a Ryan Serhant, Arjun Dhingra LFG Society in San Francisco. On to Chicago, I'm keynoting Creative Con. Once again, meetups and VIP dinners in Chicago. Coming back with Sean and Lacey to SoFi Stadium, doing our mastermind content and VIP dinner. We got some really cool people coming. So I'm even working on Mike Tyson. Adam Wilkes and I are doing some stuff together. He has some killer weed that he's giving my wife, so I'm in. So Tyson's weed's the best if anyone smokes weed. He also has ears that are gummies. You could bite the ear, and they molded it exactly to Evander Holyfield's ear. How cool is that? Yes, they did. He's so goddamn smart. Okay, after SoFi, we're gonna do office hours with Sean and Lacey. We'll be co-hosting and starring in with me. Then we go. There's a couple spots left. Our wait list got really big, but we're all going to the Masters. So Masters, and then Nashville right after the Masters, firewalking with Bucky. So we'll be leaving the Masters and going to Nashville. So a lot on the table, 200 cities this year. The biggest thing, Sean, is I want people to know our private networking group that gives one-on-one access to me every day to answer questions and to make introductions is blowing up. And it's a subtle shift from telling people it's a private coaching group with networking. It's really a private networking group with thousands of people helping each other, giving overlap agreements to each other. and giving the one-on-one coaching access to me every day to answer questions and personally make introductions. So we want that to grow. You guys were there from the beginning. All of those things, you just email me, david@dmeltzer.com.
And I hear that we're May 1st. I want everybody to come to Spartanburg, South Carolina. We're going to be honoring Dave and making him a doctor so that the show could be Dr. Sean, Dr. Lacey, and Dr. Dave.
Oh, I got real quick because I know we're going over, but I got to tell people this because it was the first question I know Julie asked me, my mom even, am I going to put doctor in front of my name? And I don't think it's the same. Like, you guys are real doctors. You studied. What I will do, including in my bio, is just say that I have an honorary doctorate. I was honored by Sherman College for the philosophies that I'm expanding and growing with that are very similar to the philosophies of Sherman College and the doctors that are studying. And I do think there is a difference between someone saying they have an honorary doctorate than portraying themselves as Dr. David Meltzer, and for those people that do that, maybe, that's your frequency, but it's not mine. I'm going to leave people who call themselves doctors, but I'm very grateful for the honor. And I can at least tell my mom that I have a doctorate, and
Yes.
whether it be honorary or not. So she can call me Dr. Dave, and she could tell her friends, Dr. Dave. But for me, I graciously receive an honorary doctorate from Sherman College, thanks to Sean and Lacey referring me and recommending me to the board. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to call you Dr. Dave.
Doctor of Love. That's what Julie calls me.
Oh, all right, everybody. Thanks for hanging in with us today. A little extra bonus time, overtime edition of Get Booked Solid. Make sure you tune in next week. Catch David on the road. Make sure you grab him and say hello. I'm going to do 8 cities with him of the 252. Catch me. Minimum.
You never know. There'll be some extras.
Yeah, at minimum. Yes, very good. All right, everybody. See you guys next week. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to